I want to make sure that it's understood that this is a unique journey for us as Black men, because we're just learning how to get into the humanity of being able to have the baseline of having emotions, and then not only having emotions, but not letting that emotion guide our next decision.
Healing myself. I'm healing my.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to Healing Myself, the podcast. I'm Scott Hayes, a licensed clinical social worker.
And I'm Shatay Hayes, producer and certified business and mindset coach.
You've just tuned in to Our Revolution. We're on a mission to help our community find freedom from the inside out. So we host conversations about God, therapy, and all the lessons we've learned about how to love, trust, forgive, and affirm ourselves first.
We used to talk about the hard parts of life. Now we talk about the healed parts, because that's where true freedom resides. Join us, and you'll see that when you save yourself first, you transform your life, and you lead the way for those around you to save themselves too.
Yo, what up, family? Welcome back to Healing Myself, the podcast. We are on the evening shift today.
PM.
Just want to give y'all a few thoughts from a Black man's perspective to my Black woman and to the Black women that I love.
Why are we doing said conversation? I'll tell you why, y'all. Well, in a couple days, we're having our third occurrence of man-to-man live. Well, I think we put live on the end of everything. It's man-to-man, okay? And say a little bit about what it is before I give more context.
Man-to-man is really a community that we're building to provide safe space and brave space for Black men to have just an outlet to talk through our joys, our hopes, to share our heart, to deal with some of the frustrations of life, to have a space to kind of talk through the things that we experience as Black men that are unique to us, in a space that we feel like just belongs to us, and where we can kind of really bounce some ideas off each other, give each other space to heal, and space to be held accountable, and space to just be and be in community with one another.
Yep, that's good stuff right there. So a couple days, we have one coming up. And if you catch the episode before the event happens, check our show notes so you can get your ticket to it. And it's coming up. And the last time we did, or one of the last times we did man-to-man, we had a conversation about how asking for help is the real flex, right? So it's actually says more about you. It takes a bigger man, a bigger person to reach out and ask for the help, right? Well, men are showing up. And you know what? Who else is showing up? Sisters are showing up for them as well. They are buying these tickets and sending them to the Black men in their lives, which I think is beautiful. So for this round, we were like, okay, we've done the perspective about men. We shared stats about, mental health statistics about men and how they're less likely to reach out or be vulnerable and all of these types of things. And so since Black men are often surrounded by lots of Black women, in terms of their life, their friends, their family, their spouses. And the sisters are always supporting. Why not speak directly to them in this conversation? And so that is what we are here to do on this evening, as my mama says. But let's start from the beginning for someone who might just be tapping in for the first time, who might not know like your story. Why is it that you have a heart for Black men specifically, mental and emotional well-being? What was the catalyst for that for you?
I think finding myself in a space where I was at the lowest point of what I consider to be my own journey to mental wealth. I came to a point in my life where I felt like a failure as a man. And I was a person who I felt like had always had everything figured out. And I had like this perfectly laid out plan. The ideas behind who I was supposed to be as a man and how I was showing up in the world were lining up at that time. And then everything fell apart. I separated, was going through a divorce. Just felt like I was failing at everything, failing at being a husband, failing at being a brother, failing at being a son, failing at everything that I had held myself in such high esteem for. And I felt like there was nobody I could talk to.
Mm.
Nobody seemed to be experiencing what I was experiencing. Conversations with my parents were around, just kind of toughing it out, saying that I was sorry, and figuring out a way to stay. My friends were, it seemed like, all in very happy marriages, and and my parents, I felt like, were in a very happy marriage, and that's all I had seen, and or so I thought, and I thought I was just doing it wrong,
Mhm.
and I got so down and depressed that at some point I was thinking about maybe it'd be better if I wasn't here,
Yeah.
and in the midst of going through that divorce, just I think in the person that I was married to at the time, I think in her anger at me, it was just kind of like pouring gas um, on a fire. Or the old folks say, my mama and them blues songs say, you pouring water on a drowning man would be
Mhm.
a better example.
Mhm.
I was already feeling, at the lowest of lows, and just being told every day that I would never be able to be faithful, that I would never be able to be a good husband for anybody, that I was, a loser, and all these other things, a cheater, and just all these different things. And I was contending with, like, I started to believe that
Yeah.
about myself.
Yeah.
I was like, well, if this person is saying this, and that's their experience of me, then maybe it's the truth. And, talking to my parents, just like, hey, you need to apologize and make it right. Um, Going to therapy at that point in a reactionary mode, trying to figure out if there was a way to reconcile the marriage, and hearing from the therapist that I was wrong, basically on every level too. I was just like, I don't know why I'm still here.
Mhm.
Um, this is all for now. Everything that I thought about who I wanted to be and who I thought I was, it was all a lie. And people are gonna know that I'm a fraud.
Mm.
And so I just need to not be here. And in that moment, or in those moments, because there were multiple times when I was feeling down on myself like that, you know, God was just telling me that I was good, that, I had participated in some behaviors that were not good, but that I was good, and that He
Mhm.
loved me, and that I was worthy, and, all of those things. And there was a point in my life where I had to decide who I was going to believe. Was I
Mhm.
going to believe the anger, and the angst, and the vitriol,
Mhm.
or was I going to believe what God said about me?
Yeah.
And even though I chose to believe God, and I credit Him for helping me get through those moments, I know that there were other men out there who were not able to conquer those thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think that was a part of the birth of Man to Man. Like, I had made up my mind that there would never be a situation again where any man that I knew didn't know that somebody had gone through something
Yeah.
similar.
Mhm.
And slowly but surely, as I started crawling out, there were men coming around me who were saying, hey, I went through something like that. Or, hey, I'm not happy at home. Or, hey, I'm separating. Or, I have separated, but we're back together. But I never told anybody this part of my story. My parents, who said they had separated before and I didn't know about it, out of that, they had considered divorce, had gone through something like bankruptcy, had gone through all these different things that people were just keeping hidden.
Yeah.
And, when you keep things hidden in that way, you don't normalize it for other people, because I was out here thinking that I was the only one that was going through, that was doing it wrong, that was failing,
Mhm.
and everybody else was getting it right. And the whole time, people just weren't telling their story.
Yeah.
And when I began to start telling my story in a way that was true to me and just honest, because if nothing else, I didn't want another Black man to feel like he needed to, or he had to end his life because nobody else was going through what he was going through.
Mhm.
And so that was the birth of Man to Man.
I love it so very much. Sorry that you had to go through that, but love the impact that is coming out of it on this side. And then to your point, I, I don't know if it's just our community, but this is the community that I know in terms of Black people. We
Hmm.
know how to keep some secrets. We know we were
Hmm.
raised on, you don't tell nobody your business. What happens in this house stays in this house. And, you could be surrounded by so many people who you call a friend or whatever and still sort of be alone or lonely in what
Yeah.
you're going through.
Hmm.
Is the case for, yeah, I think a lot of people and a lot of different things. So
Yeah, I would say that it's even harder now for this generation of people with social media,
yeah.
with seeing everybody's highlight reel.
Hmm.
And it's even more intensified that everybody has this desire to not be embarrassed by their spouse,
Hmm.
or to celebrate their spouse, or to make sure that everybody knows that y'all in love and y'all taking trips and all that
Hmm.
kind of stuff. And I think one of the things that kept me in my last marriage for much longer than I should have been there was I didn't want to embarrass myself,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to embarrass my spouse at the time. I wanted to, because people would comment, and we talked about this before. People would comment under our posts, "Oh, couple goals, love y'all, love what you have to say." And I would make these super deep Facebook posts about, loving your woman and all this other kind of stuff. And I had no idea what I was talking about. Well, I knew what I was talking about. I knew ideally what I wanted it to look like.
Mm.
And I guess at some point I convinced myself that if I said it enough,
Mm.
like it would come to fruition in
Mm.
some way, and that I would um, be as happy as I posted to be.
Come on, post to
Um,
be Marion song. What was the disconnect from
um,
what the ideal thing that you were posting and the reality? What was that gap?
I think I had convinced myself that there was a certain level of happiness that I wasn't even supposed to have
Mm.
as a husband.
Hmm.
I had convinced myself, and everything that I learned, I think from my dad, centered around like not being happy. Because with my father was present in the home, but he was emotionally absent.
He wasn't happy himself.
And my father wasn't happy because of some things that didn't happen for him. He's supposed to go to Major League Baseball. He,
Mhm.
messed up his knee and all this other kind of stuff. Dealt with alcoholism on the back end of grieving that loss, and I think never fully recovering, from that loss. And the way that he chose to deal with it was by drinking and by pushing his children, and particularly his son, like super super hard, and being very firm.
Mhm.
And I say firm because I love my father, but he was mean as hell.
Mhm.
But he thought that that was the way to discipline. And there were some things that he didn't have resolved, and it was the only way that I think he knew, because his father passed away when he was 6.
Yeah.
And so I had made up my mind that anybody that I loved was going to know that I love them. I was going to communicate it. I was going to show it. I was going to do everything that I could to make sure anybody that I loved was loved well,
Mhm.
and it didn't matter at what cost.
Yeah.
So in a sense, I overcorrected. I did more. I showed up and just spoiled rotten. You know, people in my family, even, and every black woman that I loved, I showed up, and I did too much in the name of like not being like my father, and like
Mhm.
just being an over lover,
Yeah.
because of what I felt like I didn't have.
Yeah.
And I thought that my happiness would come from doing the thing that I didn't see. And because I didn't know how to do it right, I overdid it, and thought that somehow other people would know how to return that love in the same way. And I ended up just full of resentment, and figuring out how to get my lick back without causing problems at home, or so I thought. And just doing it the wrong way.
Mm. Which is a perfect segue
Hmm.
into why we're even here tonight. So let's get right into it. You grew up in a house full of women, family full of
Hmm.
women. quite honestly. You are now married to a very free spirited, colorful woman.
Mm.
Really?
No, I
What?
was just thinking, I wish that we had like, those inserts.
Uh,
If I could put a meme on the screen right now, it would be like that Kevin Hart one where it says, "Help me, nigga, help me." But
about the
anyway,
family stuff, right? Not
no,
this family stuff, right?
sure.
Child. Anyways, so what is it that you want us to know about your experience?
Mm,
How do we? Is it see you better, love you better, know you better? What is it that you'd like us to know?
um, that I would love for you and every Black woman that I love to know that I am still learning myself.
Learning you, Scott, or learning yourself? Like you're also which one?
Both and
Mm, okay.
I am um, still learning to navigate the journey for myself to my own enoughness.
Mm-hmm.
To how to I'm navigating a journey on how to um, be a good lover, um, but not an over lover.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Erica Badu has this song. I should have. I'm and I may still. I can't remember the name of it, but in the song she says, I'm a recovering undercover over lover."
Mm,
Um, and the song is called "Out My Mind," so that's
mm,
gonna be my music for the moment earlier.
mm-hmm.
But I am indeed a recovering undercover over lover.
Yeah.
In that I still want the women in my life to know that they are well loved. When they put me in the ground, I want the every person that I love to be able to say I was well loved
Mm-hmm.
by Scott. Now, the caveat to that is I'm still learning how to couple that with having boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And um, that is something that is very difficult to do and love people well, coming from a person who has been an overlover in the past,
Mm-hmm.
because you want to do whatever you can to love your person and your people well that's within your reach.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a habit of falling in love with whatever my people love and wanting to learn to do that in my desire to love them well, and to know that you may experience some of the overlove, and then I find that I have to correct because I'm still a student. I'm still becoming, the best and highest, and for me, the favorite version of myself, which is one who's able to love well, but not overlove. And that I may get it wrong sometimes. And it's not that I'm failing, that I'm learning.
And so I think that's a really great something that you would want us to know. And then what does that mean then for how we, they, all of us love you then? Is it a matter of when you are in correction mode having grace? Is it just a knowing that we tuck in our back pocket? And you know what I mean? Like what would you have us do with that information?
To find empathy for me,
Okay.
not sympathy.
Mhm.
To not be sorry for me as I err and correct, but to have an empathic eye, and to appreciate having the open book, if will, on what my history has produced in me and how I'm trying to navigate relationship
Mhm.
with you,
Mhm.
and giving me, and I talked about this the other day, giving me grace with boundaries, giving me grace with guidance.
Mhm.
So grace to be able to understand that I'm still a student, I'm still learning myself, but being a student doesn't give me permission to step on you
Mhm.
because I've overloved in the past. So I would like grace with guidance.
grace with guidance. And it's really interesting. And I think it's a unifying thought, quite honestly. I don't know that it is specific to Black men, Black women, white women. I think people in general, hopefully, are all still learning themselves. I think, we have these conversations about healing ourselves first. When we are healing ourselves, we are still coming into awareness of parts of ourselves. We're coming into awareness of, oh, I responded this way because this is connected to this thing in the past. I didn't even realize I was triggered. And I didn't even know that this thing still impacted me this way. I didn't know that that's what resentment is, right? So the whole journey of healing is in a way learning ourselves for the first time, and then in a way coming back into remembrance of who we always were, who we came here as, right? Yeah. And so I think it's powerful to be able to say and admit, like, I'm still learning myself and I need grace in that process. And this is something to be mindful of. And I wonder if there's something to be said about how whoever you're in relationship with are likely still learning themselves as well. And so, like, I wonder what that does then. What's the impact of that to relationships? What's the impact of that to, doing life together in a healthy way?
I wanna come back to that because I guess I'm pushing back a little bit on, I do believe that we are all learning those things. I think for Black men in particular, and I don't want this to be lost, and I hope you don't find offense in it. I think that we're just getting to the point to where we're able to rehumanize ourselves.
Why? Why do you say that?
Because society, the things that we've been taught, the toxic masculinity, all those things have never really allowed us to be to a point to where we humanized to the point to where we knew that we could be learning ourselves. We could be leaning into our humanity. We could have this baseline of just like understanding that we have emotions, that we can experience all of our emotions. I grew up in a household where I got whoopings for crying. You know what I'm saying? I grew up in a household where I saw my little sister fall and somebody pick her up and coddle her and tell her that it was going to be okay. But when I saw my little cousins, and I remember falling down and people telling me to get up because big boys don't cry, right? So we're not too far removed from a time where men were dehumanized in a way. And so I want to make sure that it's understood that this is a unique journey for us as Black men, because we're just learning how to get into the humanity of being able to have the baseline of having emotions, and then not only having emotions, but not letting that emotion guide our next decision. That's really what Man to Man is about. So I do want us to get to the point to where like we're all on this level playing field, right? But I don't want it to be missed that like we started differently. I feel like women have, for the most part, with some exception, generally have had the ability to be able to lean into their emotions. It's been accepted that women, are sometimes even called emotional, and men aren't. I would, in the midst of of the point that I'm making, I would venture to say that men are more emotional than women are. We just haven't been afforded the opportunity. Wait a minute. We haven't been afforded the opportunity to lean into the fact that we actually have emotion.
Yeah.
So, yes, universalization, yes, normalization, but also a recognition that we new to this, and y'all probably true to this.
Yeah, a little bit. I can respect that. Okay, so you're still learning yourself, have grace. You didn't start at the same starting point. Is there anything else that you would have us to know? Man to woman.
That I really find it difficult to assertively communicate with people that I love. And I actually want to read this definition of assertive communication. Assertive communication is specified as the ability to speak and interact in a manner that considers and respects the rights and opinions of others,
Mhm.
while also standing up for your rights, needs, and personal boundaries.
Yeah.
Um, in conversation with other Black men that I love, uh, I have found that a through line is that a lot of us struggle with assertive communication, particularly in our marriages,
Mhm.
particularly with our partners,
Mhm.
particularly with our family, because we feel like there is a duty to care for, a duty to put yourself to the side, a duty to not raise hell at home, a duty to make sure that spouse, mother, sister, auntie, whoever has a safe space with you. Um, a duty for us to be the person that you can call and say, "Hey, I'm on the side of 20. I need you to come see about me." And whereas some people may feel like you need to put a boundary there, it's difficult to find that for us and find that and balance it with love because so much of the way that we love is self-sacrificial. And so one of the hardest things that I'm having to deal with now is to figure out a way to have that level of assertive communication where I can, because I don't have a problem, I think, with being able to respect what it is that you want and desire in relationship,
Mhm.
but being able to balance that with standing up for my own rights, respecting uh, my the thing that I want in relationship, balancing that with boundaries, I have an issue with because I want to love you and I want to love you well.
Mhm.
Uh, and I want you to always feel covered here. And sometimes coverage looks like not always putting boundaries in place, like very firm boundaries. People that you love, you relax your boundaries with them. And it's difficult to do both and,
Mhm.
you know, to love a person well and still put up boundaries with them and not feel like you're breaking their heart.
Mm. And so are you saying that the boundary, or I guess feeling like you haven't had enough boundaries, is because you want the other person to be, I guess, happy or feel loved or
To feel cared for, to feel covered, to, know that they can call on me, you know?
mm,
Uh, to give an example, if you were to call your mother and tell her that you needed $2,000, I would be devastated.
mm,
As much healing and as much therapy as I've gone through, I would be devastated if you had to call your mother and ask her for $2,000 and you didn't do it because we had a conversation about money boundaries or something that needs to be corrected in our household. And you decided, I'm not going to ask my husband because I don't want the fight, right?
mhm,
Because I want to respect this agreement that we had or whatever it is. I am going to call my mom instead.
mhm,
I would feel like our partnership is in trouble
mhm,
if you called your mom and asked her for the money rather than me, or if
mhm,
you called your dad and asked him for the money rather than me.
mhm,
Figuring out how to balance having boundaries and having conversations to make our household work well in partnership and having that level of assertive communication that says, "Hey, we can't spend anymore." Without you going and saying, "Hey, I'm just gonna call my mama."
mm. I'm processing. I think that example definitely makes a lot of sense. In general, the question that keeps coming back up for me, and I know what your response is going to be, but I'm gonna just say
Do you?
it. I do. The where is the pressure coming from to be that for everybody? And I feel like your response is going to be society. However, in this home, this relationship specifically, or maybe even family too, extended to it, who's requiring that of you? Because our conversations, and this is not a defense, this is literally processing out loud. Our conversations have always been partnership. That means you cover me, I cover you. You're the head in terms of coverage, but where then does the pressure come to be that for everybody at your expense?
It's not society. It's myself.
Okay. I said society because I asked before and you were like, society said it. But
yeah, so this level of and within the context of assertive communication, I think is like the standards that I've put forth for myself as it relates to what it means to be a good husband to me, as it relates to what it means to be a good son to my mother with my father no longer being here. I feel like I made my father some promises when I held his hand and told him it was okay to let go, that I still have to honor. Some of those pressures are a lot of those pressures are pressures that I put on myself based on my own stuff, right? That's not society. That is me having unlearned some of that stuff and then choosing to opt back into some of it because I want to honor this thing that I told my dad. I want to honor the promise that I made to your father when I took him to that soccer game and I asked him if I could have your hand in marriage. And I promised him that I was going to take care of you. So I don't get to circle back to your daddy and be like, actually, I learned some stuff about boundaries, and your daughter, she on her own.
No, I think you're dealing in absolutes a little bit.
That may be
That's
true.
an extreme. So.
But what I'm saying to you is, it's not society. It's my own stuff.
Yeah.
And when I say I need grace with guidance, it is because I'm in the midst of unlearning, relearning, and finding balance for me. Man to man is about understanding that this is a group of men coming together who are, like I said before, not failing, we're learning. So I don't know if I'll ever get to like a point to where I have it all figured out.
No.
There will always be that I have this new shiny thing that looks like healing, right? To where I set great boundaries and everybody still love me and they know what I need in relationship. And then there will always be this thing that's my old school daddy who said, hey, take care of your mom and sisters. You know, don't let them want for anything. Make sure this house is taken care of and that your mama got what she need. And then am I going to be like, nah, mom, you called me on Thursday, so no, I can't take off my job on Friday and come down there and be there for this man to come fix the house. Am I going to have that boundary in place? Or am I going to take my ass off work and go down there and see about my mama like I told my daddy I was? You know what I'm saying? Those types of things are like ongoing conversation, that internal dialogue that we have, right? And a part of that being a habitual student is like finding a balance between those two things. So there are some things that society taught me that I think I was able to relatively easily unlearn.
Yeah.
This part of who I value about the man Scott Hayes, who I want to be as the husband Scott Hayes, who I want to be as the son Scott Hayes, the legacy that I want to leave for what hopefully will be little Scott Hayes. Those things I'm still tussling with.
Come on, tussle.
Because I want to be better, and I want to be the best husband, son, father, uncle, whatever that may look like. And I believe that there are other Black men out there who, you know, our struggles to stay in a relationship, our fight, you know, with our partners and with our families, we ain't fighting because we want to fight, because we like to tussle. We fighting because we're trying to figure out how to stay in relationship and still honor who I'm becoming, right? I want to honor my boundaries and still love you well. And that shit is hard, right? And we have these gatherings and sit down and we talk about the fact that we're all navigating similar journeys, not same journeys, but similar journeys. And at the end of the day, we're all like in this struggle to try to have our own identities, but establish legacy, to make sure our families are good, to make sure we're also good, to be able to provide for our families and give them what they need and a little bit of what they want as well, and not lose ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Not fall out with and have resentment for, doing a little bit more because I love you. All of those things. And we're not going to always get it right. But what I want to make sure that we have is a space to have the discussion when we get it wrong,
Mm-hmm.
or when there's a little bit more work that needs to be done, or when we find ourselves coming to a space where they're just men around and being like, well, she did that bullshit. So what I did was
Yeah.
to get her back. Right. So we got a safe space, and then we also got a brave space to hold each other accountable. And that's what it looks like, you know, having grace in those spaces, but also with some guidance, with some accountability, with some, hey dog, you're gonna lose your family if you keep moving like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Some conversations that you may not be able to have with or some honesty that you may not be able to give to the people you actually may be in the process of resenting.
Be in the process of resenting. That's deep. We're gonna have a conversation about that later.
Mm.
Another episode about being in process of resentment.
Mm-hmm.
That's a new idea for me. Okay. And so then, we used to talk about the hard parts of life. Now we talk about the healed ones. What's the bright side of this conversation?
I really think it's all bright that we are able to have this discussion, um, and me be able to feel the things that I feel and say the things. Um, it's not always comfortable, but having a space and this platform and this relationship to where I can walk in my truth and say that I don't know, um, is I think it's special, and to be able to be having another um, man to man, or other men will be able to come into that space and be able to say, I don't know. What I came to this space in hopes that I would hear something that I'm going through that sounds familiar, that somebody else may be going through, or maybe I just need to hear and be around other men,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe I just need to sit back and listen and
Mm-hmm.
absorb. Maybe I just need to be surrounded by other strong black men, whatever it may look like. The bright side of it for me is that there is community for men so they don't feel alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that there is space for us to just be who we are.
Yeah. I love that. And it really is true. I can attest to the value of being in community just with like minded people or people who are similar to you. I think about, the opportunity that I've had over the past year to be in like entrepreneur groups and
Hmm.
just to your point, going to a call, not really wanting to raise my hand or say anything. I can contribute in the chat or,
Hmm.
kind of just lean back, but just to even hear what other people are expressing, I feel seen, I feel heard.
Hmm.
And when they get what they need, I also get what I need. So
Yeah.
just being in the room with the group like does so
Yeah.
much. It's something about, how when, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, and they probably have this saying for more than just sales kind of jobs, but I've done these what do they call, like, multi-level marketing things before.
Hmm.
Always got to hustle, and
You
then
selling noni to you, son?
no, I was for like a hot second. I sold a couple things, but anyways, it's another lifetime. And they say stay close to the fire,
Mm.
right? You stay close to the development calls and your sales rep. You stay close because when you get too far away, you start to dwindle. You get lukewarm, and then
Hmm.
before you know it, it's been a couple weeks and you don't sell it no more, like
Right.
me, right? So it's something about staying close to the fire so that you can, stay engaged and committed to whatever journey it is that you're on. So
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
What's the biggest, I guess, lesson? I don't know if the lesson is the right word for this conversation, but is there a number one takeaway, or maybe it's like the biggest lesson you've learned about being on this journey yourself of healing as like a Black man?
Mm, gosh, man. My biggest learning to date, I think, is that I ain't got the answers, Sway. I ain't got the answers, and that the answers are not required.
The answers are not required. And
Being able to be on this journey, to have an opportunity to like love someone well, to be loved well by someone,
mhm,
to have a space where I can say the things that bother me. Hell, to have the words to be able to say the things that bother me. Um, those are all answered prayers.
mm,
My biggest learning is that um, I honor the fact that I have those things when there was a time where I didn't have any of them.
mhm,
I did not have someone that I could love well, that I felt loved well by, as it relates to being in partnership.
mhm,
Um, I did not um, honor the way that I felt, and I damn sure didn't have words to put with the way that I felt.
mhm.
And I didn't know that I didn't have to have all the answers. And to be on the back end of that and to have those things, it gives me a degree of mindfulness and gratitude that I'm okay with. It makes me understand that, there is joy to be found in being able to be on the journey and not have all the answers.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I love that you have all of that. I would even maybe just say woman to man then. Uh, yes, it's beautiful to have all of those things that you are human. Like you are a
Hmm.
human being, regardless of how the world sees you or the world has treated you as a Black man. Like you are a human being. So the things that you're expressing are but you're right, as a
Hmm.
human. And I would also say, and I'll speak for myself specifically, but I venture to say that other Black women feel the same way. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to
Hmm.
know all the answers, because you got people, you have a me,
Yeah.
you have like people around you who will help to find the answers, not know the answers together. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, so the amount of pressure that you have, put on yourself, as you said in your own words,
Hmm.
I hope that what it sounds like is that maybe you're starting to find some freedom, and hopefully you're starting to let a lot of that go, that extra weight, that weight
Yeah.
of that burden. Hopefully you're starting to release that. And
Hmm.
then as you release that, I hope that it creates space for you to not just be in community with these other men who are relating to your experience as a man, but also with the women around you who are here to help
Hmm.
and partner with you,
Yeah.
because you don't have to do it alone.
Right. I think that's really the ultimate goal, and I think why I appreciate that we're having this conversation. Right. Um, it is that you know, of course, having spaces for women to talk with women about women's issues, for men to talk with men about men's issues. But, from my own very Afrocentric perspective, I believe that we need each other,
Hmm.
and we need each other to like be the best and healthiest versions of ourselves in order for the Black family to like prosper and be what it is that we need, and to have um, the healing that we need for generations to come. And we're going to have a conversation coming up about transitional characters.
Hmm.
And I think that, a part of this work that we're doing individually and as a couple is because we both want to be transitional characters in our family. And that is just someone who is changing the course of the way that what may have been considered generational trauma, what may have been considered generational curses, what may have been considered the just the bullshit that my family do when we get
Hmm.
together.
Hmm.
Um, we all desire to be transitional characters in that way, to where we break those cycles and we say we don't do that here. we
Mm-hmm.
have conversation. We have clarifying conversation so that we can learn how to show up and love each other well and not leave Thanksgiving pissed off and not seeing each other for 3 or 4 years at a time. Like, we have the opportunity to be transitional characters here. And I'm excited about how men's conversations and women's conversations will ultimately allow us to be the best and healed versions of ourselves and to be partnered together in a way that looks well for Black marriages, that looks well for the sustainability of Black families, and looks good just like for the future of the Black
Black
diaspora.
love in all forms of it.
Absolutely. I was gonna say the Black diaspora, but
yes.
Black love.
Come
What you
on.
say?
Black diaspora, African diaspora across the world. Yes. Amen to all of that. Good sir. I just thought about 4 or 5 songs downloaded in my spirit as we had the last 10 minutes of this conversation. And so, with that, what is the music for the moment? I don't even think I'm using the one I wrote down. What's yours?
Gosh, man. I'm definitely using Erykah Badu.
Mm-hmm.
What did I say? What's the name of her song?
I forgot.
Gosh, you might have to edit this part. The name of her song is. I know the lyrics are I'm a recovering undercover over lover. The name of the song is Out of My Mind.
And there you go. I'm not editing that out. It'll be in here.
May have another one too. Go ahead.
Gosh, how many songs dropped in my spirit? Well, the whole first beginning, I was like confessions. I don't know why. Not the lyrics about having a baby on the side, but just it felt like a confessional conversation. I had originally thought of "It's a Man's World," James Brown, but it ain't nothing without a woman or a girl. Thought about that. And then when you were just saying we need each other, I don't want to put this on a playlist, but I just I have to say that it dropped in my spirit. I need you. You need me. We're all a part of God's body. Like, yeah. I tell y'all, lyrics drop in my spirit. Like,
Jesus.
Song lyrics and movie lyrics too.
The other one for me is Jill Scott, Comes to the Light.
Comes to the Light.
Mm-hmm.
How's that one go?
I can't sing, but
what's the words?
The refrain is "Comes to the light, comes to the light, come to the light."
Why that song?
Just the idea behind it, like all these things that we have been keeping secret or withholding and not sharing, I think, with each other. Like, when you respond in a negative way, it always comes to the light. Whether it gets to a point to where you get so frustrated about, excusing behavior or not saying the thing that's on your mind, you end up acting out or doing this thing or, pacifying in some other way. It always ends up coming to the light. So it's always better to just go ahead and walk in your truth.
Beloved.
Go ahead and say the thing and just get it on out there because it's going to come to the light anyway. Walk
in your truth, beloved. And speaking of Jilly for Philly, last one, final answer. Think this is going to be my song for real, for real. Slowly, Surely. Have we put that on the playlist yet?
I don't think so.
Slowly, surely, you walk away from undeserving love. Like you slowly, surely walking away from the things that don't serve you anymore.
Amen.
Into the light. Okay? Jilly from Philly for the win on this episode. Sustained. Yeah?
Yeah, you don't have 5 songs. We gotta be. God,
I mean, I'm just being a vessel. I'm let the Lord use me, okay? Well, we've made it to the end of this conversation. And if you have, then clearly you like what we're serving over here. And we would like to welcome you in even further, invite you in even further. You can continue supporting us in one of 3 ways. You can follow, rate, subscribe, do all the things. Share this episode with a friend or family member who needs a safe space to begin their healing journey. You can pull up to an event. We got Man to Man coming up, y'all. I know you want to be in the room for all of this goodness you just heard, okay? Or if you're hearing this episode after Man to Man, look up our website, healingmyself.co for the next one. but attend an event, get a ticket, sponsor someone to attend if you're not in the Atlanta area. And
we also have a live podcast event coming up.
I was getting there.
Like, wait a minute, cuz.
Man to man, we do have our live podcast coming up at the end of the month. If you're in the Atlanta area or surrounding areas, please pull up. We would love to hug your necks and talk to you about healing. And it's going to be some live performances there, really good conversation. I mean, a time will be had and you should be in the building. What I hadn't said yet is a portion of the proceeds from everything that we do, so these ticket sales, are going towards our therapy fund for Black adults. So you'll be supported, partying with a purpose for sure. And then the third way you can support is purchasing some of our merch, affirmative merch. We've got the HBCUs, Hustle, Hip Hop and Healing. We've got Being Human's Heart on the Boulevard.
Yes.
We got FREE, Past Trauma Free.
Hey.
We got some other ones dropping really soon, but just check out our website again, healingmyself.co. Grab your favorite affirmative shirt, tee, or sweatshirt. And then again, even with that, a portion of those proceeds are going towards our therapy fund for Black adults.
That's low.
And with that, I just said a mouthful. Let's make the choice to heal ourselves first. Because when we do, we change our own lives.
Yeah.
And we lead the way for those around us to change their lives too.
That's right. And you're not alone. Join us next time. We're going to take this journey together. Look forward to seeing all my brothers on Sunday. Come out. Have some drinks with your boy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about all the things. And then also join us for our live podcast recording coming up on the 30th. All right, y'all. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.